famed author Clive Cussler.
The hero, Dirk Pitt.
A man has few secrets from his secretary, and the anticipation mushroomed inside her. Her hips were warm and moist. She wondered how many other women he had sweetly tortured.
Night Probe, Episode 2. Oops, all side characters.
So, is this a new microphone?
This is put together microphone. I soldered.
Oh, okay. No Best Buy. Gotcha.
I was trying to. This is supposed to be really nice,
So you wanted to fix it. That makes sense.
and I really did. Sorry for the delay. It was in pieces
Not a problem.
because I dropped it.
Ooh.
I would like to blame it on child, but I dropped it.
So it's the cat's fault. Got it.
Oh yes, I don't even have one of those.
Like 5 minutes ago, my cat walked across my laptop and almost flipped the whole thing over.
That's what cats are great for. Just the pettiness of it. And if you think an animal can be petty, what hope do humans have? If it's so innate,
I'm not sure it's all animals. It's definitely cats, though.
and dogs.
My dog usually isn't petty, although if she's in a bad mood, she'll like look at us, sad eyes, grumbly, then she'll just fart and leave the room.
If I give the smaller dog a treat, like in Secret, it will go to the big dog and say, look what I got. You don't have it. I'll guard this with my life. Because the big dog is terrified of the little dog. And just to see something so blatantly petty in the animal kingdom,
That's pretty petty, I gotta say.
very, very low.
It's a morning beer.
Oh, is it? Does it have coffee in it?
It does. It's the Morning Star Coffee Lager. Actually, it doesn't even have that much alcohol in it, so it really is a morning beer.
I binge watched the show Loudermilk, which is a middling show. It's written very funny, but it's about people in rehab and sobriety. And they were talking, and the guy was like, I just had Miller Lite. And the sobriety expert's like, oh, that doesn't count.
That's fine. Yeah.
And everybody was like, really? And I was like, it kind of feels like that's happened. I don't know what kind of Irish ass genes I have, but it would take a swimming pool of that kind of beer to get me anywhere near tipsy. That was part of the problem. It doesn't affect me until it does. And that's way far in.
Yeah, that was me when I was younger.
I was up to 2 liters of vodka. I was up to 2 liters of gin. I was a gin girl. Though at the end,
Oh dear.
vodka didn't make a difference. Whatever was cheaper. But 2 liters a day.
Yeah, that's resistance.
A glass of wine wasn't doing anything.
Yeesh.
But, like in the middle of the Raiders of the Ark movie, where I have to drink and rush under the table, I can. I've been preparing my whole life.
It's an important skill to have in your back pocket.
Correct. I used to think that was. Turns out, no, never comes up. You never have
No.
to drink somebody under the table.
Not anymore. I feel that's something that you really had to have in the 80s, because I've had bosses who told me about all the time that they had to take out like wealthy clients out on the town with like the company card and just go to a restaurant and drink, then go to a bar and drink, then go to the peelers and drink, and then hit the liquor store and drink and just keep drinking. And then, that client sends your company $1 million in business. I don't think that happens anymore.
Yeah, that was the way Mad Men, the show, was for a reason. That's what they did. I was reading this. It's called The Patriarchs by Angela Saini. It's very good. It's about the history of patriarchy and social structures. It goes into a lot of different things, but what was my point? God damn, I fainted and hit my head earlier this week, so I racked up another concussion.
Being woke?
Please
I
don't
don't
come
know.
to me.
Okay.
It's just I've just had another head injury. So now I was fasting for blood work, and I was at the supermarket, and I just did this. I went down hard.
Oh, you took a header. Don't do that.
Yeah, and now I have somebody following me from the store. A nice lady takes off her smock and pretends to be a customer. The last time I was there, she was like, "Oh, I'll reach that for you, miss. I'll bend." They're terrified of me now. They thought I just slipped and fell. Like, no, I was fasting for blood work. This is all my fault. And it wasn't graceful. It wasn't a Scarlett O'Hara type of, no, I took out shelving.
Oh, geez.
But it's okay. Everything's.
Are you okay to record with the head injury?
My memory is not going to get better.
Okay.
It's not like the coconut and the coconut scheme in the cartoons.
So it'll just be one more in our running gag of you trying to think of a movie and me mentioning the title.
You're really good at that.
Listening back to a bunch of our old episodes, that happens a lot.
Yes, it does. Oh, a few things for fun.
Uh-oh.
You know how we examine these books, and it's, no matter when something's written, if you're studying it as historical fiction, you always put a piece of your time in the work. I thought The Mummy, the one with Brendan Fraser, was going to be kind of timeless. Maybe my kids could sit through it. Because the woman who's in it is beautiful. She still passes for, like, that is still a standard of beauty. I mean, everything looks kind of normal. There's no cell phones in the story anyway. It's not technology driven. The thing that took my daughter out of it were the eyebrows. And I never would have pegged it. She's like, her eyebrows look so 90s. I'm like, what? I can't see what you're seeing.
I'm not even sure I know what 90s eyebrows are.
Much thinner.
Yeah, okay.
The girls today were bushier, and in the 90s it was thin and like arched. Everybody had to look like they were very ponderous. Yes.
I'd never noticed that. Yeah, it makes sense, though. Even if everything is like set to be factually accurate to the time period, they always have to make them attractive, literally, to modern audiences.
Yes, which is why when you watch, it's really egregious in the sand and blood stuff from the 60s, all like the anything Roman times. The bouffants, the big curly, like, oh, I love the hair from the 60s Roman movies.
After how successful the MST3K marathon was on YouTube over Christmas, it's now just a 24-hour channel, so it's all MST3K all the time, and I've seen way more movies from that era than I ever thought I would in the last month.
I used to love MST3K. I would come home the year after I graduated high school. My parents finally got cable, so I waited my whole life then to have like more channels than 3. When I'm almost halfway out the door, they get cable, and I love.
Yeah, same here.
Finding Mystery Science Theater was amazing.
I only found it because MST3K, the movie, was one of the date movies when me and my wife were like first going out, and she couldn't believe I'd never even heard of MST3K.
That's why you're in love. That's
oh my god, you have to watch this, and it became like my favorite movie of all time. And we would rent movies, but it was always MST3K the movie and something else that she had to show me because I hadn't seen anything.
oh.
Well, I'd seen action movies. That's all I'd seen.
Since Jay and I were high school sweethearts, for a second date, he wanted me to see 2 movies. He was like, these movies you have to see. So we saw them back to back. The Deer Hunter and Papillon.
Oh, geez.
I was 16.
I'm not sure he knew what kind of movies girls liked.
No, I don't think so. I was traumatized. Those are not like makeup movies. Was not a romantic date.
No.
You know how a lot of the characters in these books have like a brick of cheese for lunch with a bottle of scotch? I just had fondue for lunch. This is, we're going in like characters now.
Excellent. Well, it's episode 2, so you're doing the introduction for this one.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cussler Hustlers. I am your host, Nancy. Hi, everyone. And over there is the co-host, Tupper.
Hi, everyone.
And today, I believe we are starting on Chapter 8.
Chapter 8.
Heidi's back.
Yep, that's exactly what I wrote. Highlighted and bold, Heidi Milligan is back, baby.
It's February. It's 1989. It's Princeton, New Jersey. So the weather is miserable.
I'll take your word for that.
New Jersey's in like a constant sleet. It's not snow. It's not rain.
But man, so to answer your question, I don't know.
The most depressing precipitation?
Miasma.
Miasma's stinky.
True.
She's studying. There's an older broad there, Mildred. I love Mildred. I haven't ever met one. I'm dying to. Mildred's like, what are you going to marry a book? You're not going to find love on paper. She's not a groundbreaking feminist, this Mildred.
No, I had a few things written down for her because the chapter starts off with a lot of physical descriptions of Heidi, both looking at herself and other people looking at her. And she says how she doesn't mind all the other students undressing her. She finds it, a compliment. And the old archivist tells her that she should find a sexy young man rather than an education, but also says there's no point in arguing with a stubborn female, says Mildred, the female archivist.
But they're really throwing roadblocks in front of Heidi. She's just beaten down by the constant male gaze. She's like, I don't even care anymore. Think of me however you want to think of me. I'm just trying to read my book.
She's a naval commander working on a PhD, and everyone's just like, but you don't have a man.
And this is a big problem. Does she not see that this is an emergency?
What's your future going to be with a PhD and a naval command?
As in, Mildred's like, you can't get any love from a piece of paper.
Yeah, so half the chapter is just ragging on
But
her.
you can't get like herpes from a piece of paper either, Mildred. So go pound sand, Mildred. And this is quickly followed up by chapter 9. And we get the Heidi hoedown, the rundown of the last 3 years. She lost her husband to divorce. She had hysterectomy. I don't know why they bring this in there. Like we just have to know she cannot bear children.
I thought that the book was going somewhere. Well, the last book, Vixen 03, was going somewhere with that. But no. I guess it was just to make her relationship with, the really old admiral, I can't remember his name, make that relationship a bit more okay. Like, don't worry, he's not going to father any kids with her.
Yes, and that's what I get. Like, it's okay for her to like sleep with Dirk. Remember when one of the broads, dames, ladies of these books, she was like, oh, I'm getting a divorce, and then she was able to sleep with Dirk.
Oh, Dana, yeah.
Oh, sinking the Titanic. She was like, I haven't told him yet, but I'm checked out. Ethically, this is clean. This is like another free pass. Like, he can fool around with her. It's responsible. No accidents are going to happen.
Yep, chapter 8 ends with her, okay, well, she's doing her PhD on Woodrow Wilson, and in her research in the archives, she finds a letter from Woodrow Wilson. There's so many names in the early parts of this book, to Herbert Asquith in Britain about lost treaties, and she's like, wonder what's that about? Because she's never found anything else Woodrow Wilson has ever written about treaties. That's hard to say.
Earl Durer.
Dirk Pert.
Woodrow Wilson. Bit of an asshole name. No blame there.
And chapter 9 is her talking to Jack Murphy, who I thought was also going to be a one-off, but he comes back a whole bunch.
And we learn she's got an evil eye thing going on. One eye's got part of it that's slightly different color.
Oh yeah, she has heterochromia. That was the culmination of a scene where she goes like, she looks at herself in a mirror at her crow's feet, and then goes down her body part by body part, going, yeah, some parts of me are still okay. And then going back up to the eyes to mention that her eyes are different color. And then she gets all dressed up and goes out for seafood alone.
Yes, this was baffling. Before, because I wrote down, after we find out she has the evil eye, as she's doing her self-assessment for self-esteem purposes, I don't know.
I assume because that's what all women in all books do. So it must happen in real life.
Precisely. It's like a ceremony.
I can hear my wife rolling her eyes.
But before she knew what she was doing, she was dressed in a slip dress that plunged in the front and in the back and had a slit, and she was wearing a feather in her hair, and she was out the door before she knew what she was doing. Bullshit written by men. Oh my God.
I'm pretty sure this is why all men think that if they see a woman unaccompanied and looking nice, it's because they are desperate to be hit on.
But it's also, being hit on or not, maybe she is going out in the town to just find love for an evening.
I've met a real man.
Hi, babe. Yes, I am real man. You want to go skateboards?
No, absolutely.
There's no woman's like, before I knew what was happening, I was all dressed up. No, that takes hours. Or at least an hour, depending on how good you are at the hair and makeup and she's not putting on this dress without shaving something or waxing something. There's going to be pain involved, possibly bloodshed, and makeup, and she included a feather in this ensemble. There was a lot of thought put into this outfit. You don't just lazily attach a feather to something, you'd look like a lunatic.
Well, it was all accidental. Not Dirk. Clive was very clear. I keep getting their names switched, which probably isn't too much of a stretch.
And when she was eating at the restaurant alone, and people are still weird about this. I know a lot of people that will never eat in a restaurant alone. It is my favorite thing. Were you cool with eating in a restaurant by yourself?
Sometimes, yeah. Like, I'll go out for lunch by myself. Small tangent, but I swear it's relevant. Do you know Bill Hicks?
Well, not personally. He's been dead quite a while.
Yes, yeah. So I was out at a pub one night because a friend of mine, his band was playing there in a couple hours, but I had no one to go with. So I was like, I'm at the pub by myself. It's not like a bar, it's a pub. There's seats. I can order food. And I brought a book with me. And a person literally did the Bill Hicks
Hey, what you reading for?
routine to me. Although their version of it was to walk up to me and say, "Hey, is that a book?"
Were they hitting on you?
I doubt it. But hey, is that a book? How do I respond to hey, is that a book? Do they know what a book is? Will I offend them if I tell them, yes, it is a book? Or will I offend them if I say, no, it's a cat. Can't you tell?
No, it's a cat would have been a great answer. I went to a club once. I was never a big club person because I don't like strobe lights. But there was, when I was 18 or 19, many back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, there was a sex club in New York City on Little West 12th Street, which is much more intriguing. Little West 12th Street, that's existence, is way more intriguing than the sex club thing. We all like get our driver's licenses and we're like, oh, we're finally of age and we're going to see what happens in this thing. And I think one of my girlfriends, and Jay was my boyfriend at the time, we have a whole group of people. My girlfriend is devoutly Christian. She's just going because she's going with a group of friends, but she brings a book. She's reading like one of the Star Wars offshoot books. And she brought a little flashlight with her. She was prepared. So she's sitting at a bar and she's having like a Sprite with a flashlight and she's reading her book. And the jumper, the bouncer comes over to her. It's an enormous man. Looks kind of alone. He's like, you're the strangest person I've ever seen. There's a guy walking on all fours naked wearing a leash. A Christian girl reading a book in this joint was like blowing his mind. Everybody else was in the scene. Yeah. And we realized very quickly it's all men.
Yeah. I can see that.
We're like, what's going to happen? Nothing. The two women in the joint was me and her. She's a devout Christian reading a book, trying to block out reality. She's like, I'm not seeing this. I'm not seeing that. She just couldn't handle it.
Please go away. Please go away. Nice. Speaking of sex clubs, who shows up when Heidi's out for dinner?
She can feel the eyes on her, but she doesn't want to look up at the dark stranger that might be staring at her because of her standards of inbred modesty. And I read that, inbred modesty, like your family tree's a wreath.
Odd word choice, but yeah.
Yeah. As soon as Dirk sits down, she grabs his face and just smashes him with a kiss. She's so excited to see somebody.
Yep.
Heidi is lonely.
I wrote down, he sits down and she kisses him. You know, the man who killed her boyfriend.
Yeah, she doesn't seem to hold any ill will about that. And he asks about how she's doing since his death. And she's like, it was painless after the coma. Me, I would have been like, after the coma you've put him in.
Yeah.
I guess I hold grudges more than most people. There was a guy who came to my mother's funeral and he was wearing a t-shirt. I still remember that. Instead of like a button-down shirt. I'm like, that asshole wore a dirty t-shirt to my mom's funeral. Didn't hurt me. Didn't say anything bad to me. Came to the funeral. I have no right to be angry at this person. We're not going to explore that tangent. We'll be here all day. But this lady has her boyfriend killed by Dirk, by medical torture, and she's just like, water under the bridge.
I mean, he was old.
To do some more self-examination, because I really will just never forget a trespass. And this lady's like, murder, schmurder.
Although maybe Dirk does feel some remorse for that, because he tells her he'll be her slave until dawn.
Yes. And she takes him up on that.
Yep.
And they have they go to her hotel and usual love things happen. But when she wakes, he's not there.
Definitely a few lines I can't repeat with my family around. So I'll just put those sound bites in from the audiobook.
It was then Pitt penetrated her, and she came and came in a sweeping rage of pleasure that never seemed to end.
I have a test for you. Do you know who Derek Jeter is?
Baseball player.
Okay, good. Former New York Yankee. And he's known as a class act in the romance department because whenever a lady's leaving his abode, she gets a gift basket. And there's things like, there's famously like pickles in there. Things skinny chicks like. Vegan snacks and hair straighteners, whatever.
You get a swag bag?
Yeah, you get a basket. You get a Jeter basket.
Sweet.
I don't know if it comes with an NDA.
That's thoughtful.
That might be before. Derek might have taken that from Dirk's playbook because Dirk leaves in the night but sends flowers and chocolates.
Yeah, that's all of chapter 10 is her waking up because the phone is ringing in the hotel. There's someone knocking at the hotel room door and Dirk is gone. And she just like flounces around and kicks people and yells and wraps a blanket around herself and tries to figure out what the hell's going on.
We've all been there. She's kind of maybe a little hungover, not feeling great.
Yeah.
So nobody wakes up in a hotel room well rested, in my opinion.
At the door was the bellhop with the vase of flowers from Dirk. At the phone was Jack Murphy, the Senate historian, who magically remembered something about a picture of Woodrow Wilson, Undersecretary Harvey Shields from the boat prologue, and the representative of King George dated 1914, leaving the White House with something called the North American Treaty that there's no other reference to. Because every now and then we have to break up all the Saxon action with plot.
Pardon me, I was trying to do this noiselessly and it failed. So I'm just going to crack this open loudly.
Uh-oh.
The seltzer.
A La Croix?
No, Pulper.
Okay.
But I do like a pamplemousse.
Pamplemousse? Pamplemousse, huh? De pamplemousse?
Don't do it soundlessly. I crack mine as loud as I can on here because of Well, There's Your Problem.
Did you see the Well, There's Your Problem limousine podcast?
Oh, God, the limo crash. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, my daughter wants to go to a party, and they're just going to be driving around a limo all day. And I've made her give me every piece of information about this limo. Called the NTSB on this, people. This limo is going to be the most inspected limousine, and this company has no idea why.
Excellent, as it should be.
This company is just going to get, because the party's not for a bit, but I'm going to make sure this limousine is as safe as possible. I am terrified. At first I was like, no, can't you just go out and drink in the street?
Like a normal person?
Well, that was a tangent based on opening a can. And you're welcome, everyone, for that gold.
If people actually listen to this, I have to assume that they listen for our tangents, because that's most of what we're bringing here.
Yes, and based on that scant information Heidi got from Jack Murphy, she goes to visit John Essex, an old guy with secrets who farms oysters.
Yeah, he's looking at his oyster ponds. Heidi shows up. He's 75, twinkling blue eyes, a luxuriant beard. And the phrase that comes up so often in these books, not a scrap of fat on him. That's sort of how they establish moral character, especially for old people.
Yeah, nothing sets my heart at ease more than a frail, thin old person with no padding.
Also, he's the former ambassador to Britain and the grandson of Richard Essex, who died in the train in the prologue.
And at first I was like, her new boyfriend. No, we're not there.
I almost said that. If he was shoveling weeds at his oyster ponds, I mean, she has to have her heartstrings being tugged by that visual.
Yeah, she had a fill of butterflies.
Yeah.
He's got no fat on him, right? She's 32, he's 75. It's a match.
Just like my last boyfriend. She's on the rebound. She just got dirked and he disappeared.
Or they talk about oysters and she's like, I'm not a fan. And he's like, well, they're not really an aphrodisiac, but they're great.
Yeah, there's a lot of rambling.
Where do you fall on oysters? I think they're fantastic.
I had them for the very first time last year.
What have you been doing with your life? Just
avoiding oysters.
Get an oyster. What else?
Okay, I like smoked oysters. I never had raw oysters until I was at the oyster bar at the Hard Rock in Las Vegas.
You like it?
Actually, yeah. The same friend who kept buying me the buckets of Bud Light at night was buying me oysters during the day because nobody else would eat them with him. Tupper, you got to try these. You're a big guy. Come on.
Oh.
And the oyster bar had like 16 different flavors of them. So he just kept buying them and like saying, okay, now try this one. I'm like, that one's not too bad. They were fine. I liked them.
A rough next day, I find, if you have too many.
I don't think I had too many, but yeah.
It is rough on the stomach if you overdo it.
I can imagine.
When they get past the oyster talk, Heidi's like, your grandpa had all of his books in the Library of Congress except for this one from May of 1914 that aligns with this date of this picture. Essex is doing fancy British talk, and he's like, oh, love, it's probably just a proposed treaty. It fell through. The writing on the back of that picture means nothing. It's just a bunch of who cares he's trying to throw out there. Like, you never know minds. Don't look at this.
But he does let it slip that Richard Essex died 8 days after that picture was taken.
But then he was like, but he went to the White House all the time.
Yeah, it's just politics stuff.
It's commonplace. It's a picture at the office.
Mm-hmm.
Then she leaves and he goes into a crypt or a lair within a lair at some point. He's got a leather-bound book that he holds to his chest. He's already memorized the contents, so his eyes don't have to see the pages, and he broods.
He has a desk, and the desk gets a lot of description. He has a secret compartment in the desk that the book is in, and then he reads all day and all night, and in quotes, his soul is agonized by dread. Dun dun dun.
This part made me think of, there's an Egyptologist. I wrote his name down. You've heard me drop everything before. I just dropped that.
Well, research.
You've seen him probably. He's been on lots of specials, National Geographic, Discovery ID. His name is Zahi Abbas Awas, famous Egyptologist.
Cool.
He had a show called Chasing Mummies, in which they tried to make it time sensitive, kind of like Dirk is doing in the book now.
Oh God, all those shows are time sensitive.
He'd have an x-ray of a mummy. He'd be like, we've got to get across town and get the results and try and build suspense. Choppy music right here. And they'd show them like weaving through traffic. And I get it. This guy's an Egyptologist. You've got to get your TV money. You got to get your retirement in order. You're not going to be a billionaire retiring as an Egyptologist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't fault him at all. But I always watch that thinking, what's the rush? They're still going to be dead.
Yeah, all those shows have that rush, that intensity. They all have the exact same music. They all have the dun-dun of drama, and they have the same transitions. And then, like, something horrible is about to happen, and they go into a commercial, and then it comes out of commercial, and it's like, oh, it's fine. Nothing happened.
Or there's the recap and the build-up again. Sometimes you get a recap and a pre-cap and another commercial break because capitalism has broken our minds.
It was really weird watching those shows because for a while, all those shows about gold rushes were like my wife's comfort shows. I think that was around the start of COVID. But watching them on Netflix without commercials is weird because like there's a sudden like musical sting and drama. And then it just like fades to black and fades back in. And then like, oh, it's fine.
Yes,
It just keeps jacking up the tension and then getting rid of it.
When we first got a Roku, we watched season 1 and 2 of Heroes, which was a show. The catchphrase was "Save the cheerleader, save the world."
I loved the first 2 seasons of that.
Quite the hook, apparently, is I missed the weather. Like, there was a blizzard incoming, no idea. Like, we lost a whole weekend.
Excellent.
You just one show after another, and we watched all the Gold Rush shows. My husband, that's his. We are the Canadian opposite. You're the Canadian opposite of us. My husband is your wife. I'm you.
Yeah. We have entirely too much in common for having met randomly on Reddit.
I really do.
And after a year, we're still discovering stuff.
I couldn't put on a gold, like, every time I passed him, it was somebody in Alaska mining for gold, somebody in the Bering Sea mining for gold, somebody getting screwed over by their family because they were mining for gold.
Anyway, chapter 12.
Chapter 12, we meet another fancy boy. This guy is pretentious. Maybe that's not fair.
3 fancy boys, but I guess we only meet 2 because one of them is a no-show. We meet Lieutenant Ewan Burton Angus.
Ewan, E-W-E-N. That's so extra, as the kids say.
And there's a lot of setup.
If I met a person who spelled their name like this in 1988, I would be at a complete loss as to what their name was. I was not worldly enough to know that this was like a Ian or Ewan, or like, I would have been like, your name is, whoa? I would have been just like in the 9-year-old dunce, like, what is this name? I've never.
Clive loves his Brits, he loves his Scots, he loves the Irish and the Welsh. Like, he really incorporates a lot of them for no apparent reason in these. There is a reason in this one because there's all these dealings with England and the North American Treaty 100 years ago, blah, blah, blah.
British accent seems to class up the joint.
Yeah.
So Lieutenant Irvin Burton Angus is paired. He goes to his racket club, which is so 1980s. I do love that they stop at a racket club. The proprietor of the place, he gets a name, Alexander Moffat. Why is this character named? He comes in and says, can you play with some guy who just showed up? And he pairs them off.
That's not Moffat. Moffat's later.
I thought Alexander Moffat. My notes are old and buried.
Alexander Moffat is in the second half of this chapter at the embassy. Like, he does go to the racquetball place because he is going to be playing racquetball with Henry Argus.
Yes.
And by the way, don't have 2 characters at the same time whose names are different by 1 letter. But the guy at the clubhouse says, Argus can't make it, so how about you play with that guy? And that guy is Jack Murphy. And Jack Murphy just like immediately begins talking about the treaty.
Yes. Which is peculiar because it's not that interesting.
Yes. But I guess Jack Murphy thinks, well, you're British. Have you ever heard of this mysterious British treaty? And then we transition to Alexander Moffat at the embassy, and Angus is talking to him about the treaty. And Alexander Moffat is like, I don't know, I'll check with Home Office back in Britain, see if we find anything. Like, through a whole bunch of weird coincidences, this stuff gets back to England, like, within the hour.
And a day before cell phones, people are really tossing this hot potato around like it's precious news. This is not the name of Leonardo DiCaprio's new girlfriend. This is treaty talk from 1914. We have to get on this. Hold on one sec. I'm going to tell my husband to stop using power tools.
All right. We have that going on both ends, too, because my kids are doing the dishwasher right now.
Yeah, this is why I wrote down Alexander Moffat's name. He says, you never can tell what might be buried in the Foreign Service archives.
Yes.
War crimes. It's war crimes.
Boy, howdy, is it ever. Although we kind of skip over that. Actually, I guess we don't skip over it. We spend entirely too much time with it because Chapter 13 is Peter Beasley, the chief librarian in charge of Foreign Office records in those archives back in London. And he gets an entire chapter, and we never see him again either.
Yes, Beasley.
I was hoping you would have some things about Beasley.
He considers, yes. Very polite guy. No notes. He's a librarian for the British International Affairs. He considers all of British international affairs his bailiwick. So going way into the past, and that's all his domain. That's quite ambitious. Okay.
There's quite the body count he's in charge of.
At least in charge of cataloging it.
Well, that's important.
But there was a documentary, but there are people like this in government, and it's fantastic. It's a New York Times documentary called Obit. And it's about people who go through archives to write obituaries. And their archives are like how I imagine this guy's workplace was. It's just in the basement of some building with weirdos who never see the sun. Like, these people were at central casting. This guy's like, yeah, I have a filing system for this. Only I know how to use it. Great dude from the New York Times. Publication of a men's record. Thank you that you have a filing system only you can use. Hope you don't get hit by a bus.
Yep. I'm sure it's fine.
Peter Beasley drags his secretary, Miss Gossett, who's starving. He's like, do you want to go for lunch?
And she's like, absolutely.
And it's a ruse. He's like, this thing came up, a treaty from 1914, and it's hot. We got to get it on this now. 2 sets of eyes, better than 1 set of eyes. She agrees to help him. They go into a secure library to research this topic. Hours go by. 4 hours go by. Miss Gossett's like, lunch? Food? I'm immortal. I need sustenance.
Still starving?
Beasley's like, oh, honey, I'll take you to dinner. I have to go to the secret document room. It's only down 3 flights of stairs. It'll just be 2 more minutes. No, it ain't.
It's a secret document room that only one person is allowed in at a time. Somebody else has to lock him in while he's in there. He can't take anything out. And who knows how long he spends in there.
His description gives him white hair, so he is on the darker side of 40 or 50, let's say.
Yeah.
White hair, I think, if he was giving him white hair, he's making him old. Now this guy's got to go down 3 flights of stairs. Miss Gossett is going to pass out.
I think she should just leave. Well, she leaves the book after this, so.
She had to be like, sure, I'll just wait for you while you go into just down there, straight down there. It's dark. There's no light on. Okay. He finds something scary. It shakes him.
Yeah.
And the chapter ends.
He's shocked. He's terrified. He's trembling. And he makes a phone call, and the chapter ends.
Oh, I just want to circle back to when, because I forgot to point it out, and it's fun. Listeners, a fun thing is happening. Listen up.
Uh-oh.
When Lieutenant Ewan Burton Angus meets Jack at the racket club, they go for a few drinks first before exercising.
God, I miss the 80s. See, it's like we were talking about. It's whining, it's dining, that's how you establish relationships and rapport with someone is toss back 5 or 6 scotches.
That's what I forgot. The thing that I was going to show you in the book about feminism was up until the mid-60s, there was an elixir that they used to give children that was made mostly with codeine. And when, like...
It's called Shut the Fuck Up.
and your parents talk about, like, I got my kid to sleep at night.
Say, how about a little NyQuil? Oh, good.
There was such a social uproar when they made this tonic illegal because people were like, how will we put our kids to sleep? Kids will never sleep. It was a huge problem. It's like saying, no, we're going to get rid of sliced bread. No, you're not. The public rose up. It was like, but this was killing babies, so they had to take it off the market, no matter how many people complained. But it was so commonplace.
Jesus.
It sold more than, like, milk at some points in certain areas. And it was such a social force that's not tangible anymore, but it was a huge part of child rearing was just, here's your shut the fuck up sauce. Now we can do our job.
Shut the fuck up, all right? That's the name of my new book, Shut the Fuck Up by Dr. Dennis Leary.
It was straight up tranquilizers for kids.
So when yay old folks say, oh, kids were so much better behaved, yeah.
There were 3 sheets to the wind.
But we time traveled back to that chapter. And now we're back to chapter 14.
Yes, we're back to the important characters.
Heidi and Pitt are just mingling at the airport, having drinks, because it's the morning.
I was going to say, every chapter involves drinks. This is a very alcohol-soaked book.
I've been to Dulles Airport. You feel guilt by approximation in association, so you want to drink it off.
Ah, good.
The Dulles boys were not good boys. Heidi's getting a little misty-eyed. She's going to miss Dirk. She's getting a little wistful, like, oh, will they ever see again? And Dirk's pretty nice about it. He goes, it's a good thing. I believe in doing good things again. We'll come across each other. And as they part, because he has to go to some far-flung place, she has to go to San Diego, she shoves a document in his pocket. This confused me. Because their previous activities were visiting Pound Town, not talking about her research. Why would he care? Why would she think he would care?
Yeah, you have to think that he isn't allowed to tell her anything that happened in Vixen 03. So all she knows is he showed up at her 75-year-old boyfriend's inn one day, talked to him. They went and did some clandestine stuff. Washington got bombed, and then her boyfriend died. So
she's not wary of Dirk at all.
I'm not sure what she thinks Dirk does. But I also did end this that, yeah, she gives him all of her research and then asks her weird ex-Air Force ex-boyfriend to read her goddamn PhD thesis and ask his advice when she's done all the research.
Self-sabotage is a thing women do. It's a thing everyone does. Be on the lookout. Listeners, if you are listening, if you're doing something irrational for the attaboy, for the pat on the back, for somebody to say, you did great, just skip it. Tell it to yourself, and don't enter that toxic relationship looking for validation.
Dirk also makes the joke that he can't be allowed to be seen giving her a goodbye kiss, because if anybody sees him kissing a sailor, they'll think he's gay.
Oh, be nice!
Yes. That reminded me of the old riddle we were hit with in grade school, with a father and son are in a car accident, and they are taken away by ambulance, and they were wheeled into the operating room, and the surgeon's like, I can't operate on this child, that's my son. And people are like, how can that be? The dad's hurt too.
It's the bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
The sailor's a lady.
A lot of people couldn't get that. And I can't lie, I didn't get that at first either. Although I think I was like 13, so.
I think I was like 5.
I was not having high-level ideas at the time.
I've been around so many children.
Jesus Christ, cat.
More than I ever wanted to be. They just react.
My cat just walked across my keyboard, minimized everything, and turned on the Steam keyboard. Hold on.
Perfect.
Fucking God, I hate that cat.
You love that cat. Don't tell him.
Okay, I do love that cat, but no matter how many times I say get off my keyboard, and I've been saying it for a year straight because I've been working from home a lot over the last year, yay government job, is the cat wants nothing more than to walk across the laptop keyboard, walk across my secondary keyboard, or sit on my lap and then just lift up one leg and start hitting the keyboard with it. Like, there's no reason for this to be happening. I have to throw the cat harder.
you work from home and you have a cat that sabotages you.
Yes, I do.
We were just talking about self-sabotage. Maybe bring that up in therapy. Forget a sponsor,
Put a fence around my desk. Anyway, we just had 14 with Heidi in the airport, but 15 is when the story completely changes gears yet again.
You're at a classy funeral. There's a lady who's regal, majestic, gives off an air of importance and gravitas. She's watching a body being lowered into its plot. The people at the funeral disperse. A man who has been standing apart and in shadow comes towards her, and she's like, she knows him. We don't have her name yet, but she goes, he named you Brian Shaw. You needed a new identity. It's Brian Shaw still, right? And he goes, yes. So we know he's clandestine.
Yep. Also, the old man is trim with no fat on him. Told you.
Mid-60s. We know he's some kind of ex-MI6 spook, British CIA type person, because they're in England.
Yeah, we got a lot of backstory on the both of them, but it's vague backstory.
We get vague backstory. Apparently, their old boss is being lowered into the ground.
Yeah.
The old boss was the one that made Brian Shaw change his identity to Brian Shaw. She gives her name as Mrs. Huston because she married a Graham Huston, and they had a nice little life together.
Yeah, she works at an antique shop. Brian Shaw was never married because his wife was...
He was married briefly. She was killed.
I wasn't sure if she was killed before or after the wedding, because it is stated that he never married, but then it was stated that his wife was killed, so...
Oh, could have been. Yeah.
Take that how you will.
Well, murdered her on the wedding day. He is British, after all. There's all those stories. That's how places get haunted. They need it for the tourist trade.
They mention the Russians. Brian Shaw has a farm in the West Indies. Because I guess we've used up all of our South Africa cred. We got to go somewhere else where the Brits are in charge.
No, he said the West Indies was too dangerous. He moved to the Isle of Wight.
Did he? Oh, okay. I might have misheard that part.
That's another thing. Damn,
At the end of this chapter, he's told that his farm in the Indies will be 80 acres larger when he's done. Does he have 2?
But he said distinctly, the Indies were too dangerous. I have a farm in the Isle of Wight. So I think Clive got mixed up then. It's just remember last book? There was no chapter 61? This just could be part of that.
Oh, God.
And in this kind of cloak and daggery funeral scene, where everyone is dressed very tastefully and elegant, I imagine it's drizzling, there's lots of black umbrellas. I would show up, I'd be like, oh, I have a pink umbrella. I got it free from CVS.
I have one minor quibble, too, which is Mrs. Houston. I was assuming that she was also an agent, a former agent, a spy, somebody cool. No, she was the dead guy's secretary.
Yes, no indication for this secretary on the sexy meter, so we don't know.
When she's describing him as an older man, trim, fit, no longer so ruthless, she points out that where he had not an ounce of fat on him, she had spread.
Oh, bit of exciting news. I reached out to Scott Brick's publicist to try to get an interview. I haven't heard back yet, but I will hunt them. Scott Brick is the narrator for the books.
Oh, hell yeah.
I don't know if they have the NCIS shows.
Oh, hell yeah. I've
okay.
seen those.
It's not the same acronym. It's NSIS. The designation is not sure if sexy. I have been finding myself using that in my notes a lot, in reference to secretaries. Definitive sexy, not sure if sexy. Designation for secretaries. Hopefully Elon Musk comes through with something after the telepathy thing he's managed. We'll have a device that we'll just put in the book, and it'll tell us how many sexy secretaries are in it.
If only there was some way to have visual representations of characters in a book. Illustrations recreated on the page somehow.
It's impossible. You dream too boldly.
I just read the Dark Tower books, and I do love the addition of the Dark Tower books that do come illustrated. Every 100 pages, there's an oil painting of something happening in the book, which is pretty cool.
I love Stephen King with all of my heart. The Dark Tower books I could not get into. I've read everything else. You lose me there. This is why we're not twins. That's the only difference.
We're not twinners. I will say the Dark Tower is there's 4 separate things. There's The Gunslinger, Book 1, is absolutely its own thing, which is this messed up, dark fantasy Western. You have 2 and 3, The Drawing of the Three in the Wasteland, which are a weird low fantasy, evil horror intruding on our world, on the regular world with regular people. You have Book 4, which is Wizard and Glass, which is a flashback, which is like a high fantasy Western romance, and one of his best books. Then you have 5, 6, and 7, so one after the other. You have Wolves of the Calla, Song of Susanna, and The Dark Tower, and he wrote all 3 of those basically all at once, immediately after having his car accident, because he figured, I have to get this done. And those 3 books are sort of an incomprehensible 3,000-page jumble of chaos. And you kind of have to read it as one book. So the end of The Dark Tower throws a lot of people.
Give it another shot. But I do think Misery is his best book. It's so mundane in the horror of it.
Yeah.
It's just a lady living by herself.
There's the reason Kathy Bates won the Oscar for playing Annie Wilkes. Like, you don't win Oscars for horror movies. You don't win Oscars for a Stephen King movie. And she was so damn good, and the character was so damn good. You can't deny how awesome that story is.
I read the book before I saw the movie, because I'm that old. The movie hadn't come out yet. I remember when the movie came out. God damn, the late 1900s.
Well, don't say it like that. Now I'm old.
I thought it was a masterpiece. I had to put it down, and it freaked me out so much. It was a year before I picked it back up again, because it was so casually violent.
Mm-hmm. The book was amazing. The movie was amazing.
Back to Clive here. We're not comparing you, Clive. We love you too, and we love you differently, Clive.
Yes. I can soapbox about Stephen King for hours, but I should probably stop because that's for a different show. I think we'll wrap up chapter 15 because we set up a whole bunch of stuff at the end of 15, and it's the hour mark, and my sister's coming over in a few minutes. So,
okay. Shaw, as we know him, visits his old spook headquarters
in Hyde Park.
Oh, yes.
And in doing a bit of research for that, I found, boy, is there a lot of Hyde Parks in the world. There's like 6 in the States. There's 3 in England, although there's one famous one. Like, there's a lot of parks named Hyde Park.
I've been in that Hyde Park. Lots of pigeons. My husband took like 8 rolls of film of like this bird that just kept following us. I'm like, what about this beautiful tree? No, this pigeon. We've got so many pictures of this bird from 1998.
Excellent.
What I also had then, and comes up here, which young people will not know about. Shaw's going to his old workplace. The guy who's replaced the man they just buried is the new man in charge.
The Brigadier.
Shaw's getting a new spooky CIA MI6 type of job.
Yeah, he's getting one more job.
Yes. Right before retirement. And the new boss asks him, we're giving you a new identity. Is your passport in order? Sir, you're giving him a new identity.
It wasn't a new identity. He says they're going to be going with Brian Shaw, and he'll get a new identity after.
Oh, okay. I was like...
Yeah.
And he was also set up with traveler's checks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to explain traveler's checks to new people.
I only ever saw ads for those on TV. I still have no idea what they are.
Right? Got them for a trip in the 6th grade. My mother was afraid to give me cash. She got me a $20 traveler's check I couldn't use anywhere.
Useful.
Would you like to buy some itchy and scratchy money?
What's that?
Well, it's money that's made just for the park. It works just like regular money, but it's, fun.
It's prepaid paper that's not money anymore?
I do like how Shaw asks if it's the Russians or the Chinese, and the Brigadier's like, it's the Americans. And Shaw's like, oh.
Oh, and Shaw's like, we can't... I've known some Americans. They're nice. We can't spy on them.
Yeah.
You really... that came out of anybody's mouth ever. Much less a clandestine operative.
Especially when, in the next chapter, he meets up with the spies who are already established in the American government.
Yeah, what was the grandstanding about? This guy Shaw gets up and he's like, I've known Americans. They're solid. They like pie, apple pie specifically, and flags that are waving, and God and eagles and missiles. Lots of like rhetoric about how he can't spy on the Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're a spy.
But they established that he's going to be in the States for a few weeks to keep an eye on them and figure out something called the North American Treaty. And his farm will be 80 acres larger when he's done. And they all but come out and say that this is senior citizen James Bond. Like, this is the best of the best British spy. who was at his peak in the 50s and 60s.
He's still trim.
In the next chapter that they established that he was particularly well suited to dealings with the opposite sex.
I wonder how that gets recorded, but I do like that his farm is going to grow by 80 acres, because they never talk about compensation in these things.
Yeah.
And that's always my sticking point. How much does it pay? How long does it take? How much more do I get if I get hurt? These things never come up. And I think in real life...
It absolutely would, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they just have to offer various intangibles. And it really just makes me think of that scene from The Simpsons where Homer goes to work for Hank Scorpio and Globex. And when Homer does something good, Hank says, when you come home tonight, there'll be another story on your house. This is the equivalent of that. When you come home, your farm's bigger.
But it's a tangible... He's going to get 80 more acres. That's fantastic. I'm so happy for him. And that concludes chapter 15. He gets the job, and he agrees to be senior citizen James Bond, which at the time, around this time, the Broccoli family was feuding. I think we had 2 James Bond movies going on at the same time in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, because you had that, wow, what was that Sean Connery movie? I think it was You Only Live Twice, where he was playing a spy who wasn't quite James Bond, but totally was James Bond, and that was going up against the British studio James Bond.
And Roger Moore had Born in the Snow. He was very one to stick with the other Broccoli once he found out the shooting locations. He was like, wait, other guy's going to be in the Caribbean and I'm going to be in snow? Well, so Roger Moore got the short end of that stick. But they were 2 kind of older James Bonds happening while this book is in place.
Oh, sorry. It wasn't Never Say Die. It was Never Say Never Again, which is a non-canon James Bond movie. That's what it was.
Why could you mix those up?
They've gone through all these on Kill James Bond, which is one of my favorite podcasts. It's one of the main inspirations for me doing this with Clive Cussler. So I probably know entirely too much about Bond.
And I'll show you as a parting present. I was listening to the audiobook. This is the most janky-ass printing of any book ever. I think it took so long because they have to print it for me. I don't know if you could see it. The chapters start like in the middle of the page.
You said that with Iceberg, with book 2, how the...
Iceberg was justified like half a page off the whole book. It was, I think if I didn't have dyslexia, I would have caught it from that book.
He's not getting the high-quality printers for these.
No, but luckily, the sentences are on the page. They don't wander off into the void.
Oh, thank goodness.
It's just weirdly spaced throughout the book. Like huge gaps. This page is blank. It's in the middle of a chapter. Enjoy it.
Alrighty. We will pick up next week with a whole lot more spy crap, a whole lot more terrorism, scrolling down. And then the Doodlebug makes a comeback because the whole middle of the book is about something completely different we haven't even gotten into yet. This is so complicated. I
love a twist.
This is 3 books happening at once.
All I know is this Heidi chick must be something else to get all of these men in a tizzy about something that took place in 1914, because they could just ignore it.
Oh yeah, because old man James Bond is being specifically tasked with going after Heidi.
I know.
Oh God, they hook up. I bet you they hook up.
Do, right? It's her type.
Yeah. New boyfriend. And he's suave.
It's practically robbing the cradle for her. He's 66. Which is a fine age. All of our listeners, date whoever you want. Heidi's supposed to be 32.
Yes. Anyway, my sister just walked in. Our families are visiting. So goodbye, everyone. I'll see you next week.
Okay. Have fun with your sister.
I will.
As much as
Bye.
you can, in light of the circumstances. Again, I'm sorry.
Now the dogs are yelling. Okay, bye.
This has been Cussler Hustlers. Your hosts have been Topper and Nancy. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Cussler Hustlers.